Greetings. This is Lenharrow Fantasy Adventures Part 3, where we go over the referee's guide. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2 that cover the Lenharrow Player's Guide section of the Light Edition, then you should probably check those two videos out. This video ran a lot longer than I thought it would, so we ended up having to have a fourth part that will cover the creature guide, the King's Own Adventure, and the summation of the entire book. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And then we go into our referee's guide. As I said, I don't want to drag this out like I did for the players part, but I thought the players section was important to really go over. In the referees section, it basically lays out the rules and how to play. We have the referee's playbook, which is their game mechanics. This is everything you need to know to run a game is in the players section, the referee's playbook section. Then we have advice on how to run a campaign, and then a chapter on how to run magic in your games, and then a list of spells that go beyond third rank. You can allow players to have these spells too if you like. And then we have an appendix of magical devices, and this is a basic description of certain magical devices and how you can use these in your games. And then of course we have an index and a PC trip sheet. Now I'll look over this real quick, and like I said, the referee's playbook is this is basically an advice book. It gives the game master ideas and tools to run a game properly. We talk about possibility of maximum hit points based on race, word about ability scores. This is the game system basically. How to make ability checks, how to make ability feats. When you with your ability scores, you have the opportunity sometimes, like if you need to notice something, you would make an insight check. That would be a 20-sided. You roll your ability score less, you succeed. Now, if it's more difficult and it's harder, instead of applying penalties or anything, we instituted something called feats, which is a percentage listed with each ability score. And if it's harder, you make a feat, which is a percentile roll, instead of a ability check. So the way we determined it, and made it so it's easy to remember, is with an ability score, you roll one 20-sided dice with a check. And with a feat, you roll the percentile dice, which generally has two 10-sided dice together. So for a check, it's 2 for a feat, 1 for a check. So 2 feat, 1 check. Faith points, I talked about a bit. And how to award them is here in the rest guide. And then we talk to the rep, give the rules for how talent slots cost, how all that works, how resistance rolls work, a little bit about how to help players create their characters, and notes on the lifestyles. Let's see, how to give CGPs, how to help players spend their CGPs, how to purchase skills and talents. This is basically the meat of the rules of the game system. We have a chart on how to give CGP awards while playing. Now, as I said, everything in the game system is optional. We give you these tools to use, not use, or adjust as you see fit. Then we go into detail on how the combat system works, how you run a combat round. Like I said, you determine surprise, then you do your first strike rolls. For the ref, we have possible surprise modifiers. We have the actual combat of attack rolls. Each creature has its own combat die based on their hit degree, and resistance rolls based on their hit degree. Like I said, we try to keep things as simple as possible so that you can just play the game and not worry about how the mechanics work. We let the referee worry about how the mechanics work, is our philosophy on it. Then we inform the ref on how attack types and status effects work. Now, as I said, these can be modified, but we have your basic attack types of a bludgeoning weapon. It looks like a club or hammer. It's basically smashing. Piercing is stabbing. Slashing is cutting. And then ranged attacks are anything that project a missile from the device or the weapon to a target. A bow and arrow, basically. Then we go into the other attack types, like we have charge attacks. Chemical attacks would be your acids and your poisons, toxins and other chemicals. And then we have elemental attacks. This would be your air or sonic, earth, fire, all the different elemental types, how that works, how you can run it. Magical attacks like disintegration or energy, general magic. Force attacks are anything that is basically magical blunt force trauma would be a force attack. Like physical force, there's mental force and magical force, spiritual force. Your basic 4 resistance rolls: physical, mental, magical, and spiritual. There are other attack types like erosion, time, mental attacks, plant attacks, stun attacks, suffocation, strangulation, spiritual attacks, and special attacks. Now, just like I said, these are just all ideas to give the referee an idea of how to run things in their game. This is the rules that we use and how they affect their game in combat or other situations. We have a section here on curses and maladies and what the difference between those two are. We have what we like to call an impact damage rule. That would be something that a referee needs to go over and determine whether they're going to use or not. Which would missile paralyzation would fall under this rule. And we wanted to make bows and arrows a little bit more dangerous. So anytime you are hit with a missile or you hit a target with a missile, you have to make, if you're struck, you have to make a missile paralyzation roll. It's a physical resistance roll. And if you fail, then you are recovering from pain for up to 1d4 combat rounds. It simulates being shot, basically, with an arrow or hit with a rock or anything that is a missile. And also anything that causes an impact, which is why it all falls under the impact damage rule. And then we have missile ranges. Like I said, these are all guidelines. Some of these make sense, and some of them may not make sense to you. Use what you like again. Then we determine if you want to use critical hits and fumbles. We have a system for you. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't. I put into this critical hit system everything I thought works about critical hits and critical fumbles. So basically the way the critical hits work is if you roll the highest number on your combat die, it's a crit. If you roll a 1 at any time on any combat die, it's a fumble. And then you back that up with a 20-sided, and that determines the results. Now, with a critical hit, you add the 20-sided to your attack rating total roll, which is your combat die roll, added to your attack rating, and then you add the 20-sided, whatever you roll on 20-sided that, and that determines the severity of your critical hit, and whether you're a normal melee or whether you're a master. Determines whether it's easier to get damage multipliers. Now, if you fumble, you roll a 20-sided. Like a 1 to 4 is a miss. It's just a miss. But if you roll 5 or higher, things can happen. You can drop your weapon. You can hit someone at random. You can definitely hit a party member. You can hit yourself. Well, that's a way fumble. And these are different between the normal melee and the weapon master. And the skills determine when you become a weapon master. Then we have item resistance rolls. This can be important in case an item is attacked by something like, say you drop your sword in a pool of lava. What happens? Are you able to pull it out before it disintegrates, or does the item just succumb to the lava? If somebody tries to break something with, like say you want to break some glass, it should be pretty easy to smash glass. So you would have to roll a 2 or less not to have your glass break, basically, by somebody trying to smash it. But, on the same token, if somebody's trying to smash, say, steel, it wouldn't be that easy. On rolls of 1 to 15 on a 20-sided, still simply would not be broken. Now, also magical devices may increase these rolls, so referees will need to, if they want to use this system, they need to read this and make sure they understand how this works before they use it. And then you bring it all together, how all of it works together, and then I give a final word on how to use the referee's playbook or your game mechanics. Now, Chapter 2 goes into campaign details, like I said, how to run a campaign, and so we talk a little bit about Lenharrow and the continent of Loire, which is where most of our games take place. People of northern Loire is where a lot of the main games are going to be taking place. We have southern Loire as well. We call it realms of the north and realms of the south. But for the most part, the rest guide focuses on the north, gives you an idea of some of the lands and people. I'm not going to really go into major detail, but a section that we really need to go over because we have incorporated bounty hunters into the game system. A referee knows how to run a bounty hunters guild, so we put that in here. How shop talk works. Shop talk is basically guild lingo, so they can say words and mean one thing. Like if they say he's an agent, that means he's a bounty hunter. But if they say something like it's a party, it's a battle, so they can have a conversation in front of maybe like somebody they don't want to understand what they're saying about going out and doing some types of jobs that aren't necessarily pleasant conversation. You might want to keep it down on a low key. That would be your shop talk. And this is a skill that can be purchased under guild skills. And we give ideas on this. This is, like I said, these are all just ideas on what you may work into your campaign. Then we go into running the campaign on creating RPCs, or, like I said, we don't use the term non-player character. I never did like that. All characters are players. The referee plays characters, and the players play their characters. Any character that you run into that is not a player is run by a referee. It is, in video games, you have non-player characters, but in a tabletop role-play game, you do not. Referees run all those characters, so we like to call them RPCs. It's basically the same concept. And then we determine adventure status rating and gameplay. We go over basic games, intermediate, and advanced. We also have a subcategory of starting characters, but we don't really go into a detail on that. We just consider those basic in the light edition. Let's see here. And then how magic works in your game is Chapter 3. We have deities. We actually fixed this. I don't know why it's still that way in my PDF, but how the deities work based on the power of the deity, whether they're a greater titan, a lesser titan, a devotee, a demigod, or an immortal. We have how the magic is divided up and how that works in a Lenharrow game. We have a chart that tells you about deities, their names, and what they're the deity of. We are intending to put out a book about deities, but it's not really pivotal to a game system, so we just, like I said, we put a chart together and you can give them an idea of what the name of the deity is if you want to use our deities. You may choose your own myths and types of deities that you want to have run in your game. Then we go into what we call deep magic, which are innate abilities, things that just work. Certain races have certain abilities that just work and that are magical. This can be used or not used, but We have certain races like the Droll that just has deep magic. They have innate abilities. How that works versus arcane and divine magic, and what anti-magic is, and how that works versus deep magic. Then we have the innate abilities chart and a few, like I said, a few details on how this works in the game. Like it's pretty self-explanatory that you have an acid arrow, and this is what it does. Like I said, you have a fear aura. This is how it affects the game. Referees are free to determine how this works or doesn't work in their game. Then we go over the types of spells. We have the arcane magic fields and how that works. We have if there's a spell that causes confusion, we have a chart for that. We have extended spells. Like I said, we go up to 5th rank for the referee. And if the ref determines that they want players to use these spells, they are free to do so. We keep things really simple. Monsters only have up to 5 hit degree in a basic system. So they would have up to 40 some odd hit points. Hit points are really simple in our game. We try not to get too crazy with them. This is what never made sense to me about level, so that's why we use our power score and hit degree instead of level. We have summoning charts for animals and monsters. Arcade casters summon monsters, and divine casters summon animals for the most part. Now, referees are free to change this as they want. And the way this chart works is pretty simple. You have the hit degree of the monster based on the spell that you're casting. Like say you're doing monster summoning 1, it would do 1 hit degree monsters. That's how simple it is. And you would roll a 10-sided. Say you roll a 6, you would get a pixie. And this is the page you find it on in the creature guide, which we have in the next section of the Lenharrow Fantasy Adventures. Then we go into what divine orders are, how holy shrines work, and the difference between a temple, a church, and a shrine. Like I said, and then we have the divine spells extended to 4th and 5th rank. Then we have how to determine random possessions or items that are carried on creatures or individuals that players encounter that they have defeated. It's a pretty straightforward system. Like I say, a power class 1 monster would have 1 possession. Sometimes they have more. Sometimes they don't have any, and that's very common, especially with animals and other like blobs and the like. You would determine if they have possessions. You would determine by rolling percentile dice whether they have no item. I don't think it should happen very often that a creature has no item. If they're supposed to have possessions, they should have some. But it's possible that they have less or more, depending. So what we determined was you roll your percentile dice, and we have categories of what types of possessions you can roll. Now, there's a chance that they're carrying random junk. It's not a very good chance, but it's there, and then we have that. And then we have common items, uncommon items, rare items, and then 2 rare items. So sometimes they may have an extra special item. And that's done by the power class of the monster. If it's a power class 1 monster, and they have one possession, then you would roll the type and on the appropriate chart to see what that item is. Or if they have a 3 power class and they have 3 possessions, you go to the power class 3 chart. But we have that up all the way to power class 6 in this book. So in case refs want to make their own creatures, we're also going to be adding more powerful creatures to what we like to call our enhanced edition, but we'll talk about that later. Then we have random item category charts to determine items randomly, what type of weapons and armor you may roll up. And then a brief description of some of the devices and how they work. Now, again, this is up to referee interpretation. This is how we determine it when we run games. You may make things a little different, But we just look at the basic description, like a backpack and weightless is, how it functions in the game. Now, again, you can change this on your whim. We do by category. I'm not going to really go into major detail on that because this video is already running pretty long. So I'm going to try to skip here real quick to the creature guide. And I wanted to give you a brief note on this trip sheet that we give you. This helps a referee. You basically write down the player's information so that you don't have to keep asking them for it during the game. This sheet lets you have up to 6 players. If you have a 7th player, you can put it on the side. You have more players, you can use 2 sheets. I mean, it's pretty simple. You can copy this or print it from a PDF copy when we have one available. We don't have one as of yet, but that will become available hopefully later on this year. I have to learn how to make it so that it works properly on Amazon.